All right, good evening. We are continuing on our march through Shas on Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. We have our sponsors for this evening, Wednesday's Daf Tying Tzitzis for Chayalim event. It was sponsored by Dr. David and Nina Bernstein. That was an amazing event. A lot of crowd, big crowd here. Tying tzitzis, green tzitzis, all over the place. And also Josh and Chana Bernstein, the Ilui Nishmas, Josh's cousin, Eli Feld, Pinchas Eliyahu ben Menachem Mendel, Ve'ahuva Zichron Uvracha. His neshama should have an aliyah. And I should also mention our last evening sponsors was for the Daf Yomi and the beer and the wings. All of those were sponsored by Rabbi Aaron and Evelyn Kislasi and Jeffrey and Chava Baylor Wald to commemorate the 1 year anniversary of Daf Yomi of Kahal Yereim, as we said yesterday. We are moving on. We are in Rebbe and Machlokas we had mentioned between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. I just took an extra look because this finger motion to be able to squeeze the blood that we were talking about, right? That's complicated. The Rambam seems to say that it's these two fingers, right? Even though it's called the small finger, right? It just means that it is the one next to the finger, even though this is your bigger finger. But okay, so some gear cells change. So this definitely seems to be an easier motion to squeeze the blood off, but I'm certainly seem to be comfortable enough to be able to figure it out. In any event, right? So in any event, right? You're walking around the Mizbeach. We had discussed that where we're applying the blood of this korban chatos as you're walking around the Mizbeach. You're walking around and you're putting it onto the corner, and one opinion was it needed to be within an amma of the corner. And one opinion was it had to be actually placed on the corner, right? The blood had to be actually placed on the corner. So we had said, well, if he's placing it on the corner itself, so then it could be anywhere. But if it's being placed below, then it needs to be placed exactly on the corner. So we had this argument that we had mentioned in passing between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, right? In that, is the blood able to be applied on the corner, or is it just meaning the corner is just this corner, this part that protrudes upward, or is it all the way on this side above the chuta sikra? That's the question. So my Rebbe. Umay Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. What is this argument between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon that we talked about? Detanya we're in a brisa. Damim ha'elyonim, the upper blood, nitanin michuta sikra lamala. Any time that you have a blood application that's supposed to be brought on the above portion, there are two korbanos where the blood is brought above the red line. The korban chatos of an animal, and a korban ola of birds. All of the other korbanos are brought below, the blood is applied below the red line. So these two korbanos, where the blood is applied above the red line, then anywhere above the chuta sikra is fine. The chuta sikra is this red line that goes around. Is it red in the picture? It doesn't look red to me, but I'm colorblind. So it's a chuta sikra. It's called the red line. Okay. Yeah. So damim tachtonim, if it's below, right, the lower blood, nitan michuta sikra lamaton, can be placed from the red line and below. Different Rebbe. That's what Rebbe says. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon says, "B'med dvar amurim." What is that talking about? The olas ha'of. That is when it's talking about the korban ola of a bird. That's, like we said, there's two korbanos that are brought above the red line. The korban of a bird, the ola of a bird offering, that you could place anywhere on the wall of the Mizbeach. Aval, bechatos behema, but the sin offering of an animal sin offering, hi atzma ein nasis ela al gufa shel keren, the blood application must be on that corner protrusion. Right, this little corner, these corner protrusions that are sticking up. That's where the blood application has to be, according to Rebbe. And that was the source of our discussion, whether that, according to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, that's where this argument comes in. Amar Rabbi Yevo, my time with the Rebbe. Rabbi Yevo says, what is Rebbe's source for this rule that it can be applied only on the corner itself? The pasuk says, "Vehahar el arba amos umeha ariel ulemala hakronos arba." So this is in Sefer Yechezkel, and Sefer Yechezkel, it's kind of interesting. Maybe worth pulling out Yechezkel at one point just to be able to go to point this out. They are describing the third Beis Hamikdash. Right? And Yechezkel gives the dimensions and explains what the third Beis Hamikdash is supposed to look like, right? So there, he talks about the Hahar El and the Ha'ariel, which is talking about what he names the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach, I'm not quite sure why. I'm sure the Mefarshim explain why. I just didn't take a look over there, but that's the name of the Mizbeach. And he says, from there was 4 amos from the height of the Mizbeach is 4 amos, and then from there comes the 4 kronos. So the Gemara wants to explain what's going on here. Arba amos hu dehavya. He says, is that true? The height of the Mizbeach, or its width? Where are you getting a measurement of 4 amos? 4 amos is not a measurement. So Amar Rav Ada bar Ava explains Mekom Kronos Arba, that the location that the corners take, right? The corners are taking up a space which is 4 amos from the top of the Mizbeach. So the Gemara wants to know, Mekom Kronos Arba Havya, is really the 4 corners are taking up 4. They're only really, right? If they're 1 amma by 1 amma, then they're only taking 2 amos in any particular direction. They're not taking up 4 amos in any direction, because it's 1 amma plus 1 amma, it's taking up 2 amos of this direction, or 2 amos of this direction, or 2 amos. They're not taking up 4 amos. Ella, so rather the real explanation for this pasuk is Rishus Kronos Arba, that the location of ownership of the corners is 4 amos, meaning that from the top of the corner until the chut hasikra, until the red line, is 4 amos, meaning that you have a 1 amma space over here, and then a 3 amma space all the way down till you get to the chut hasikra. Okay, we will discuss the rest of this. The rest of this is going to be this 1 amma. This is 5 amos, which brings you up to 6 plus 3 plus 1. You're going to wind up with 10 amos being the total height of the Mizbeach. But this section here is 3, and that's what's talking about the Mizbeach. There's a corner, right? And there's a 4 amma space, but that means that the location, that's what this pasuk is telling us, that the location of the corner is a 4 amma span. But that would mean that you can apply the blood into any part of the Mizbeach above the chut hasikra. Okay, so that's our proof. That's what Rebbe's proof is.
Isn't there like someplace else in the Gemara when they have machlokas like this about what did they actually used to do in the Beis Hamikdash? They said, well, so and so saw what they did,
yes,
and he says this is what they did. So that is the proof.
So first of all, you're going to wind up that Rabbi Avo is hundreds of years after,
right? And
even Rabbi himself is 150 years or so after, and yeah, nobody witnessed it. By that, none of these people witnessed it. You certainly don't have any disagreements in the times of, let's say, Hillel and Shammai about what was going on in the Beis Hamikdash, because exactly that reason, because they would have just gone and taken a look. But you could imagine, well, how did they forget so quickly? And the answer is, if you ask me something that happened 150 years ago in American history, I can appreciate that there might be a couple of perspectives as to what exactly occurred.
Plus, they tried to kill them all.
Yeah. Okay, so now, Tanan awesome, right? Let's bring another Mishnah that talks about the location of the placing of the blood. There's a Mishnah in Maseches Midos that says, Chut shel sikra, the location of this red line, chogro be'emtza, it went around the middle of the height of the Mizbeach. It was like, what's that word, like it's circumscribed, right? The middle, around the middle of the Mizbeach. Lahavdil bein damim halyonim ledamim hatachtonim. And its purpose was to divide the blood that has to be brought above and the blood that has to be brought below. So the Gemara says minani mili. So where do we know that this is this that's what the purpose of this red line is, that it divides the blood? Amar Rav Acha bar Rav Katina. Rav Acha bar Katina says, Shenemar, the pasuk says, V'haisa hareshes ad chatzi hamizbeach. This in Shmos, when Moshe Rabbeinu makes the Mizbeach, right? So he makes his Mizbeach, and it says that he placed a lattice work halfway around the Mizbeach, halfway up the height of the Mizbeach. So therefore, you can see that the Torah is saying that half the Mizbeach, you need something that divides the Mizbeach into 2. HaTorah notna mechitza lahavdil bein damim halyonim ledamim hatachtonim. The Torah told us to put a physical marker on the Mizbeach to indicate, even though there also happens to be a ledge that goes around, right? There's a physical marker that says above here is where the upper blood goes, and below here is where the lower blood goes. Okay, Now, we're back to talking about the leftover blood of this korban, of the korban chatas that we were talking about in the Mishnah. Shiari hadam, the rest of the blood. Remember, we came down the ramp, which was missing on this picture, this way, walked down here, and poured it into the opening, which was right at the bottom, as on the south side. So Tana Rabbana Rabbi learned, El Yesod HaMizbeach Ze Yesod Dromi. You're supposed to pour the blood, right? The pasuk talks about that El Kol Dama Yishpoch El Yesod HaMizbeach. This is talking about the individual's korban chatas. You're supposed to pour it to the Yesod HaMizbeach. The Gemara comments, this Brisa comments, Ze Yesod Dromi. This is going to be the south hole. Ata Omer Ze Yesod Dromi. You say it's going to be on the south side. Oh wait, El Yesod Maravi. Maybe it's the same one on the west side. Right? So, Yola made Soso Mina Meforish. The answer is, the pasuk doesn't clarify which hole it's supposed to go down, which drain it's supposed to go down. So let's figure out which drain from some another place in the Torah where it does specify. Amarta Yilma. So the pasuk talks about the chatos hapnimios, the inner chatos. It says that you're supposed to put it into the mizbeach ha'ula, which is by the Pesach or Moed. You're supposed to put it into the drain, which is by the opening of the Ol Moed. So it tells us very clearly you're supposed to pour that blood in the drain on the west side of the mizbeach. Amart. So you say that you're supposed to learn this. Unclear where you're supposed to pour the blood of the korban chatos. Well, you want to learn it from the korban chatos that we do know that it's supposed to be poured on the west side. Yilmad Yerida so min hakevesh mi yitziaso min hahechal. Ma yitziaso min hahechal b'samachlo. Af yiraso min hakevesh b'samachlo. So what we should say is, rather than suggesting that we should pour it on the west side, just like that's where we poured the blood from the korban that we just had on the west side, you're going to pour it in a hole on the south side, because just as you're going to pour it onto the hole, which is right there and present, right when you walk out the door of the Beis Hamikdash, you're going to pour it on a hole which is right there and present, right as you walk down the ramp. Not to go around to the other side of the Mizbeach. Not that it's so long to go around, but you're not going to go around. There's going to be a hole right there on the south side. Okay, so that's how we know that it's supposed to be poured onto the south side. Okay, now, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Shmuel says, Zeh v'zeh yesod maravi. Rabbi Yishmael disagrees. Rabbi Yishmael in the Brisa says that you're going to pour all of the blood from the chatos, from whether it's from the inside chatos or the outside ones, you're going to pour it into the base on the west side. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, Zeh v'zeh yesod dromi. Doesn't matter. Both of them are going to go on the south side. Bishlam l'mandam yesod maravi. Okay, I can appreciate the opinion that says it's going to go on the west side. Why? Because the pasuk does tell me that you're going to pour the blood into the base that's closest to the opening of the Beis Hamikdash by the korban that's made on the inside, and it doesn't tell us where to pour the blood by the individual's korban chatas. So maybe it's the same place. Maybe that makes some sense, right? We said no, not necessarily, but we can at least understand and appreciate that logic. You're so dromy. My time. Why would anybody hold that you're going to pour all the blood into the south side? That's contradicting a direct pasuk, which tells us where to pour the blood from the Yom Kippur service, or from the right, because it says that you're supposed to come out of the mizbeach, out of the Beis Hamikdash, and pour it onto the hole that you come across right when you walk out. It should be on the west side. So Ravasi explains, Kasavra Haitaina Kula Mizbeach Betzofon Kai. Okay. This opinion holds that the Mizbeach is all in the north side. And here's our diagram of the Beis Hamikdash, right? Okay, this is our Ulam, right? This is the Heichal. And this is our Ulam. The Ulam is this forward antechamber, right? This is the Heichal, that's the actual Beis Hamikdash. And now the courtyard goes around like this. Okay? There's a north side and a south side. This is north, this is south. Where was the Mizbeach in this picture? So we are going to learn there's 3 different opinions. Okay? And I should have drawn this actually bigger, because this is going to be my Mizbeach, okay? So I'm going to draw it like this.
At first glance.
Okay, and this is my dividing line. The Mizbeach could have been all of it on the north side. It could be all of it on the south side, or it could be 50-50 in the middle, right? Just for reference, in this picture, it seems like it is, I'm not quite sure exactly how far it looks like it's a little bit offset. I don't know that I'm not sure this goes by any opinion. This seems like it's not quite the middle, but I'm not quite sure on this one, but okay. Right? So the art scroll probably has a diagram on the bottom, right? If you look in your notes. So this opinion is going to hold, right? And we're going to have what we're going to be pouring into the base. This opinion holds that the whole Mizbeach was on the north side. Okay? Therefore, if you walked out the door and you came walking your coin, you're going to walk out, and you're going to meet the south side of the Mizbeach on your way out, right? If you held it was here, so then you'd bump right into the west side, right? But there, I bump into the south side, and that's why I'm going to pour it onto the south side.
When it says that it's on the south, all in the north, is he including the kevesh?
No. The kevesh is going to still wind up being all the way down here, right? But you're still going to bump into the hole, which is on the Mizbeach itself.
But it's the lower frontal hole. Which one?
It's going to be small, so you're not going. That's what you're going to get to. Okay, so that is a possibility, right? So that's why there's an opinion that says you're going to pour both of the blood into the south, because that is the hole that you're going to come to when you walk out of the Mizbeach, walk out of the base of Mikdash. Lishnach Rina, another explanation, right? That he says Kule Pesach Bedorom Koi. The whole doorway of the Heichal was on the south side of the Mizbeach. Okay, so this version, right, that the whole door of the, right, is going to suggest that not only is the Mizbeach, right, this doorway is 10 amos wide, this doorway is 20 amos wide, okay? So there's a strip here and a strip on this side. That's I'm just drawing those guiding lines. That's not really there, but that's why we have so many colors. So we have so many colors, right? So this strip, for illustration purposes here, right? This just shows you that there's a strip here that's 5 amos and 5 amos that doesn't open into the Heichal, but does open into the Ulam, okay? So, therefore, they say that the whole doorway of the Heichal was on the south side of the Mizbeach, means that it's not only that it was in the middle, it was actually offset by an extra 5 amos off to that side besides. Okay, so therefore it's actually moved over, and so for sure when you're walking out, you're going to get to the south side. It's going to be the side that you get to first. Okay, I don't know if the art scroll diagram is decent. This diagram is actually pretty decent. The one that's on my side, on mine, right? This is splitting. This is where you can see if it's split in half, right? Then the whole mizbeach is on the north side, right? And this is if the mizbeach is offset an additional 5 amos to the north, right? So either of those two versions. But then that would explain. Now we're going to say this is going to be an argument. We're going to see this in a few pages that the mizbeach could have been here, it might have been there, and it might have been there. Right? So, Tana debate Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So he's learned in a brisa from the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai they say as follows: Zev zeh yesod ma'aravi. You're going to pour the blood into the western side, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. V'simanech, the way that you can remember, mashchu gavri legavri, that the majority, right, the majority is going to pull the minority, meaning that the number of students that Rabbi Yishmael had, they were more than just Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. So the students of Rabbi Yishmael held that the blood was going to be brought onto the south side. They knew that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai would agree with them, right? So that at the end of the day, that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said that it has to be poured on the west side. Even though we had quoted Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said before that you're going to pour it on the south side, and Rabbi Yishmael said you're going to pour it on the west side. And on the west side, now we have Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai saying no, pour it on the west side. But the way that you're going to know that that is correct is because apparently it seems as Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai started to agree with the students of Rabbi Yishmael based on the number of students, that it seemed that there were more people that were believing that opinion, and he said, okay, so that makes some sense. Next Mishnah, next Korban, Ha'ola. Now let's talk about the Korban Ola. They're kodshe kodshim. Nola is kodshe kodshim. Shchita sabit safa, and we're going to shacht it in the north. Vekibul dama bekli shares. We're going to catch its blood in a service utensil. Since we go over it every single time, now we're expecting it. That's how you're going to remember it, right? It's all the same. Bit safon on the north side. V'damaton shtema tonashein arba. The blood applications for this one, instead of being on all four corners, you only have two applications. You're going to put it on opposite corners. You're going to put the blood, when you make that application, it's going to go on two applications, but it's going to go across the corner so that you have it on all four sides. Okay? So that's how that's supposed to go. And we already learned before which two sides it's going to be. It's going to be this side and this side because that's where there's a base, right? Because it's going to be connected the yesod. U'tu'una hafshet v'nituach, then you've got to remove the skin, and you've got to cut the animal up. The kalil liishim, and then the entirety of it, other than the skin goes to the kohen. The animal is completely burned on the mizbeach.
Nothing is consumed.
Nothing is consumed. Nobody eats anything from the korban ola. Okay.
If you have something that's called Loiterman on
And
it.
the ola should be a par, son.
So ola, where's our blue chumash, right?
Yeah.
Our ola.
Can be car, sewn.
So here's our korban ola. There are many different types. The individual ola, a voluntary ola, sheep, goat, or cattle. They're always male, right? And that's the voluntary one, right? What makes it voluntary? You decide you want to do it, right? Other times, right, we have got a whole list of other times olos are brought, right? An ola is a daily tamid. That's a community offering. They're brought with the korban omer. Somebody converts, right? They bring one, right? So they bring that korban also. So then that one's obligatory, right? But this is the voluntary one but these are all olas. All the olas are brought the same way. So, right? So the answer is which animal? Sometimes it could be a ram, sheep, goat, cattle, lamb, bull. Could be any of those, right? Depending on what it's for.
But always male.
Always male. Always a korban ola is always male.
What type of korban do you bring as a female?
Korban chatos is a female, right?
Just kata?
Shlomims also could be, I believe, right? We have. That's why this is a great chart. It's good to know that's there. I'm going to use that. Korban shlomim, right? That the chagiga could be male or female. And the korban that is for a toda could be male or female. A shlomim could be male or female. All of them could be male or females, right? The only one that has to be male is a nazir. Okay, so. Yep. If you ever space out between aliyahs, so this is amazing, and now you can read. Before you look at this and go, there's no way I can make heads or tails of this. But now, right? Okay. So, korban ola. Okay. That's why we had discussed korban ola before, and they said the offspring of the animal, right? We said, well, there is no offspring of an ola. You can never have a female version of a ola, so you can never have the offspring of a korban ola. Okay. Now, ola, my time. Tana le kodshe kodshim. This Mishnah, when it talks about the ola, it says it's kodshe kodshim. If you go back to last Mishnah, where it talks about the korban chatos, it just says, hey, a korban chatos, this is what you do, but it doesn't call it kodshe kodshim. It just says chatos hatzibor v'hayachid, right? But it doesn't call it kodshe kodshim. But we know that the chatos is kodshe kodshim. So why did we not mention it before, but now we go back to mentioning it again? Mishum delo ksiv be kodshe kodshim hi. The answer is because the pasuk that talks about that in the Torah does not mention kodshe kodshim, right? So therefore, we're going to go ahead and make that clear, right? That it is kodshe kodshim. Right. By the Parsha Korban Ola, it doesn't use the word Koche Koche. It does say that by Korban Chatos and by Korban Osham. So the Mishnah clarifies and says, but an Ola is a Korban, is Koche Koche. V'dama to onshte matonos. Now the blood application is going to be 2 applications, right? Which are going to be 4. Hechi Ovid, how do you do this? So Rav says, nosein v'chozer v'nosein. He says, you come to the corner and you make a blood application, and then you go back and you make a second blood application. You make sure you hit it on north, right? You're going to come up to this corner here, right? That's going to be the corner that you're going to come to first. And this corner, you're going to hit the east side, and then you're going to hit the north side. Okay? So therefore, that's the strategy. Shmuel disagrees. Matana achas kimin gamba. You're going to make a one throw, which is like the Greek letter gamma. Now, the Greek letter gamma, Rashi says, it's shaped like a chaf sofis. So basically, right, you've got your corner, right? Go look that up because I was going to say that, right? You're gonna
Gamma.
right.
Gamma.
This you hit your corner. You're going to throw it on so that it goes onto in one motion onto both sides. Okay, so that's your application.
Rabbi?
Yep. There you go. See, like a backwards chaf sofis.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. Okay.
No, they say here the uppercase one looks like that.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So it's the backwards chaf sofis. Chaf sofis goes the other direction. But yes, it basically is a right angle, which is exactly what we're saying. Okay. Okay. So kitanai. So it's a machlokas. We've got machlokas tanaim. Yochel yisur kenuzrika achas. You might think that it's one throwing. You take the blood out of the utensil and you throw it. Talmud lomar. Saviv. It's supposed to be done around. Isaviv yochel yaki fenu kichut. If the pasuk says that you're supposed to apply the blood around the mizbeach, then maybe that means you take the blood and you start going around and you draw a line all the way around the mizbeach. Talmud lomar v'zarku. And the pasuk says you're supposed to throw it. So kal ketzad. How are you supposed to do that? Kimin gamma. You throw it so that it goes around by throwing it in the shape of a gamma. Shtei matonos shehein arba, which is 2 applications, which covers 4 sides. That's what I mean. Shtei matonos shehein arba, 2 applications which cover 4 sides. Rabbi Yishmael says nemar kan saviv and nemar lahalan saviv. We're going to compare by the chatos. It says you have to go all the way around, and by the ola it says you have to go all the way around. Ma lahalan pisuk ve'arba matonos. Just like the blood application of the chatos is 4 separate applications, 1 on each corner. Afkan pisuk ve'arba matonos. Here too, it's 4 separate applications. Ma lahalan arba matonos al arba kronos. Well, yeah, but the chatos you're supposed to apply it 4 times on 4 different corners. Afkan arba matonos al arba kronos. So maybe also here you're supposed to apply it 4 times on 4 different corners. Amart ola to uno yesod. The answer is ola. We learned can only be applied where there is a base. The keren mizrach is dromis lo haya lo yesod, and the southeast side has no base. Southeast side, that corner right there has no base. So since the southeast side has no base, you couldn't be applying it there. So it can't mean that you're applying on all 4 corners. Hence, it must mean that you're applying it only on the corners opposite each other that have the base. Okay, good. Now, this is the question Yehuda asked a few days ago. My taima, why? Why is there no base? Why couldn't they just construct the mizbeach? It's got a base all the way around. So, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar says, "Lefisha lo haisa bechelko shel torif." The answer is, it wasn't in the land of the torif. Is an animal that devours or tears up, right? The Binyamin, like a wolf. A coyote probably would, right? But we're going to talk specifically about wolves because Binyamin is called in the psukim that he's the toref, right? And the that portion of the Azara wasn't in Shevet Binyamin. So you have right. Okay. Multiple colors. Love this.
Don't use yellow. I was going to do the yellow one from back here.
It was hard to see the yellow. Okay. So fine. Okay. I've got. Let's not use this one. Okay. I've got my mizbeach, and it's being built on territory
where they're at.
That's divided, right? On this side is Binyamin territory,
Who's on that place?
and on this side
Whatever they is their next
is Yehuda territory.
is the next thing they're gonna order. There's no one hits after that bottom rung.
Okay? So therefore, since that's Binyamin territory and Yehuda territory, that the Mizbeach cannot enter into Yehuda's territory. It can only be constructed in Binyamin territory. We're actually going to see that the more accurate drawing of this is that the Mizbeach, which has a base, right? The base extends an amma like this around the corner. So and the base goes around this way, here and around the corner. We're actually going to see that Yehuda's territory, right, comes up to here, then curves down and goes here and goes that way, right? I just went to, okay. And Binyamin's territory, likewise, is up here, right, up to here, and then it continues on along here. So therefore, the Mizbeach can't have a Yesod where the territory doesn't belong to Binyamin. Okay?
Why? Are we about to find out why that is?
Yes. There, you knew that it's coming. Okay, good. There you go. Now it's okay. Yehuda was the one who was daring last time. He asked why not the base. Now we know it's okay. We can ask. Okay, good.
I'm just amazed they had such a weird demarcation line.
Yes.
That's mind blowing.
Yes. So, and then it goes right through the Azara in the middle of the Beis Hamikdash. The territory of Yehuda and Binyamin got split Yerushalayim in half, splits the Azara in half. Okay? Amar Rabbi Levi Bar Chama, Amar Rabbi Chamra, Rabbi Chanina, Ritzua Haisa Yotza Mechelko Yehuda v'Nichnesis Bechelko Shel Binyamin. A strip of land, territory, went out of Yehuda's territory and into Binyamin's territory. Now, to understand that, right, where that strip is, if I'm understanding this correctly, I believe that it's further telling us a further encroachment of Yehuda's territory, of most of the Mefarshim, that actually there's a strip of land that goes into Binyamin's territory like that besides. Hence, you couldn't have a Yesod on that side either, because that's this strip of land that runs in. And Binyamin needs to be the one who's holding the Mizbeach, right? So, because that was, and here's what happens. V'haya Binyamin hatzadik mitzar aleha bechol yom. Binyamin knew where the demarcation of the divisions of the land was going to be. It was very clear, everybody knew where the Mizbeach was going to be built because that's where Hara Moriah was, that's where all the Korbanos Noach built his Korban. The Rambam tells us all these things in history. Interestingly, I had heard today that even the location of Cain and Hevel's Korbanos, right? But if you think about that, they were in Gan Eden at the time. That is interesting that their fight is not on Har Moriah. These are Korbanos, where the Korbanos were brought, is where the Mizbeach is. So he was upset, realizing that part of the Mizbeach was not going to be in his territory. So therefore, right, he was all upset. Lenot la. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Chofeifa love kol hayom. He was trembling upon it or worried about it all the day. Lefichach, therefore, since he was also worried about it, Zacha Binyamin Atzadik v'nase ush pizchon laHakodesh Baruch Hu. That's why Binyamin merited to have the whole Beis Hamikdash in his territory. Right? He was so worried about losing part of the Mizbeach. Right? So therefore, not only that, because Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Ubein Keseifav Shachain, Hashem's dwelling place is between his shoulders, right? On Binyamin's shoulders. So therefore, we know that Binyamin was upset. They therefore built the Mizbeach in such a way that it had cutouts so that none of it would be in Yehuda's portion. And he also
why did Yehuda get upset?
Why didn't Yehuda get upset? That's a great question. But you see that seems to be right. So Binyamin got upset because he was going to lose it in part of his territory, right? Yehuda seems to understand that there has to be a division, and this we have to go into, and this is good sheer philosophy stuff. A significant, important of the division between responsibilities of being the rulers and being the spiritual rulers, right? That the rule of Kohanim, which is interesting that Binyamin is not a Kohen, and nevertheless, right? But Levi didn't have any territory in any event, right? So that Binyamin merited to hold that because Yehuda could not hold both, right? Yehuda couldn't have the Mizbeach and control of the Mizbeach, right, in the same, and also the Malchus. So
the Heichal is also in Binyamin.
that's correct, because the Heichal is on this side, right? On this side of the border.
Right.
This side of the border is Yehuda's side. Okay? So now, Meisvei, but we have a question. Olas ha'of ketzor ha'isa nasis. How did they make the olas ha'of? What was the procedure that we're gonna see in a Mishnah in about 10 pages, about a week or so from now? Ketzor ha'yanisis, haya molek es rosha. They would do malika on the head, mimul orpa from the back of it, umavdil, and then they would separate the head. Right? You're not supposed to take the head off of the chatos bird, but the ola bird you're supposed to. Umimatze dama al kir mizbeach, and then you squeeze the blood onto the wall of the mizbeach.
Why could you take the head off of one, but you could do the other?
Xeris HaKosov. Torah tells us how each korban is done. So now, V'amart lo haya lo yesod. So now, if this was done, right? He's does this on the southeast corner where this is done, right? He's gonna do malika on the southeast corner and he's gonna apply the blood. So now, the problem with this is, if there's no yesod, so then ba'avira ba'amahu deka'avid. So how is he doing this? He's doing it in airspace above a section where there's no yesod. Now we know the ola of the bird, he's up on the ramp, right? He's up on the upper section, but nevertheless, there's no yesod underneath it. So the answer is Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Emar Kach Hisnu Avira de Binyamin Karke de Yehuda. He says that they made this condition that you have to do the blood, that the airspace belongs to Binyamin and the land belongs to Yehuda. Rashi understands what's going on is this very interesting picture. They built a floating yesod in the airspace on that corner, so that it was, for the sake of this ola, which was done above the red line, you could use that corner. But all of the other ones that they have blood applications below the red line, this yesod would not suffice. Hence, you wouldn't be able to sprinkle any other blood on that corner, right? It got this extra little protrusion. Other Rishonim don't like that explanation because that is a little weird, and you never see that. You never see that little protrusion. I mean, this diagram you wouldn't see it. It's on the other side which is hidden, right? You wouldn't be able to see where that protrusion would be. But that's how Rashi understands what's going on here in the Gemara, right? So therefore, right, you've got this extra little 3 tefach span or this extra. I guess it's got to be at least 4 tefach, this extra amma that sticks out on that corner so that you don't have a problem with the yesod. Okay. My lo hava lo yesod. So what that means that it didn't have a base. Rav Amar bibinyan, Levi Omar bidamim. That Rav says that it's literal, meaning there was literally no base. All the diagrams as we've been describing them, there's no base on the bottom of it, right? That section is missing. And Levi says, no, the yesod was there, it just had no practical, it just wasn't kosher. It wasn't practically a yesod. It was physically there, but it just didn't have the halacha of yesod because it wasn't in Binyamin's territory. Rav, he says that there was no yesod. Mitargem be'achsante yisbnei madbacha. So he translates the pasuk which says Binyamin ze'ev yitraf. That pasuk in Bereshis, that where Binyamin is getting his brachos from Yaakov, he is a wolf, a crouching wolf, werewolf. He's not a werewolf. He's a wolf that is devouring, right? So he translated as in his territory the mizbeach dwells. So therefore, it's not in Yehuda's territory. So there's no physical structure, none of the physical structure of the Mizbeach is in his territory. Levi, however, translates that pasuk differently. Levi metargem be'achsante yit b'nei makdesha. That the Beis HaMikdash is built in Binyamin's territory, which is true. The Beis HaMikdash is makom mikudash l'domim, the holy places where the blood is being applied are in Binyamin's territory, but there were parts of the Mizbeach that were outside of Binyamin's territory. So that's their argument. Okay, so now let's bring a proof. Toshma, come and listen. Hayesod hayemahalech al pnei kol hatzafon ve'al pnei kol hamarav. The yesod would go all around the north side and all around the west side. Ochel bedoram ama achas ubemizrach ama achas. And then it would extend around the south for one amma and around the east for one amma. As you see in this, right? The yesod continues around into the east and into the south. One extra amma goes around the corner a little bit, right? You can even see it on this picture as well, as this yesod curves around the corner a little bit. There are 3 different shitas here that my pictures bring that potentially explain. This is the explanation that we are going with, right? It wraps around a little bit. One says it just extends outwards. It actually doesn't wrap around the corner. It just extends a drop. An actual other explanation is it actually went all the way around except for that little bit. But that's a little bit complicated according to the opinion that we're trying to prove that there was no Yesod in the territory of Yehuda. But, so let's at least keep it simple and say that that's our explanation, or that's our explanation. But this is how our diagram looks, right? That little corner goes around. So therefore, it seems, right, that it's, but there was no base anywhere else. So my ochel, so we're going to say, what does that mean? It consumes bid damim. It doesn't mean that there wasn't, again, that doesn't necessarily prove that there wasn't a base. It just means that there was no functional base. So that doesn't prove anything. Tashma, come and listen. Let's talk about the actual construction of the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach was 32 amos by 32 amos. That's our dimensions of our Mizbeach.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I'm not bringing it right, but
Okay.
you still see such a thing. Concept.
Okay.
So like
32. That's a bad 3. 32 by 32. Okay, that's our Mizbeach. Okay.
Feet would that be?
So each amma is 1.5 to 2 feet.
Okay, so like
60 feet,
Yeah,
somewhere about 50 to 60 feet, something like that. Okay. Okay, so that's your Mizbeach. So now that is the size. We're going to see that we're going to pile on. That's the base. That's the base, 32 by 32, which means that it's a square. So there's no mention of the cutouts because it's only 31 in the sections where there's cutouts. So the answer is Hacha b'maya skinon. What are we talking about? Minatzad, from the corner. Meaning, you're right that it didn't look like this. It was like this. And when we talk about 32, we're measuring this from here to here, right? We're not measuring from here to here because you're right. That would only be 31. So it doesn't prove against anybody again. Toshma, come and listen. Nimsa poreach amma al yesod amma ve'al sovev. So the Mizbeach, right, has, this is a good picture of it, has a ramp. The ramp overlaps this ledge, right? So that means that if you're going to count up the length from one end to the end of here, and the Mizbeach is 32 and the ramp is going to be 30, you have to remember that there's an overlap of 2 amos, because the ramp, top of the ramp, extends over where the base extends over the base and over this ledge. The base is 1 amma, the ledge is 1 amma, and it touches the top, which is 2 amos into the Mizbeach already. So doesn't that imply that since this Mishnah is saying it's overlapping 2 amos, it's overlapping the base, that means there should be a base down here. And the ramp is overlapping the base here and the ledge here in order to touch the Mizbeach at the top. So doesn't that prove there is a base? So the answer is no. Ema keneged amma yesod val amma sovev. The answer is no. All we're saying is out of the 32, you have to count where that amma would have been if there was a yesod plus the ledge. Doesn't mean that there actually was a yesod. Okay, so that's fine. Which does tell us, right, and we're going to talk about the dimensions of things, that the Gemara on Daf Samach Beis is going to talk about the dimensions of the Mizbeach with the ramp, that you have to remember that the Mizbeach being 32, plus you're adding another 30 of the ramp, doesn't equal 62. Because 2 amos overlap each other, right? You're going to get yourself a total of 60. Okay, so now, Toshma, come and listen to Tani Levi. Levi taught in a brisa. Ketzad boninus Mizbeach. What was the procedure for building the Mizbeach? How did they build a new Mizbeach? So you'd think that, hey, they had the same Mizbeach all the time. Not true. The Mizbeach could break. And when it broke, you needed to build a new one. So how do you build a mizbeach? Mevian mal ben shu shloshim v'shtayim. They would make a form, right? Get wood that was 32 amos square. Al shloshim v'shtayim, 32 amos square. So you build a big frame, 32 amos by 32 amos. Vegovho amma, and the frame would have a height of 1 amma. Umevi chaluke avonim mifulamos. They would bring a whole bunch of rocks, stones, and they would bang gedolos, bang tanos, big rocks, small rocks, and fill it in. Umevi sid vikunya v'zefes. Then they would take plaster and ground up rocks or rubble, whatever, and pitch. Umemache, and then they would make a mixture, like a liquidy mixture, and then they would pour that in like a cement, v'shofech, and pour that into the mold. So you would basically, like you have concrete where you have little rocks and pebbles in it. So that's basically what they were forming. They would they would fill it with rocks and then pour the liquid over it so that you'd have it, right? You'd have it cemented in. V'zehu makom yisod, that built the yisod. Then you'd let that dry. V'chozer mevi malbein shehu shloshim amal shloshim. Then you'd go back and get a second mold. And this mold was 30 amos by 30 amos. And vegovo chamesh amos, and it was 5 amos tall, right? And that would go on top. Umevi chaluki avon, you do the same procedure. Bring rocks and fill it up. V'zehu sovev. Okay? That got you to this part, the sovev. Then you'd bring another form, 28 amos by 28 amos. Vegovo shalosh amos, and that is 3 amos tall, as we said before, right? That's going to be 3 amos tall. Maybe chaluki, then you bring stones and you fill that up, okay? And you let that dry. That's going to be the place where we call the ma'aracha, where we're going to burn on the surface. That's going to be the surface structure. Then chozer lamed melabin shu amal ama umevi chaluke avane mefulamos bengedos bengetanos. Then you're going to make a form again, and you're going to build. That'll be 1 amma by 1 amma, and you're going to put them on all the corners, right? And maybe zefes bekunya, and you're going to then plaster it in. Umemache v'shofech v'zehu keren, and that's how you would make the corner. V'chein l'chol keren v'keren. And then you'd go take the mold and move it around and build the corners up. So that was the procedure for building a mizbeach, right? You'd think that they had one solid piece, right? No, they would build it up with cement until it was all in, and they would build it in stages, right? This one was 32, this step was 30, this was 28, and then you'd bring one and you'd pour it on. And that's how they build a mizbeach. Now, v'chi tema de gayizle. Now, if you have got a cutout, if your form is 32 by 32, and you pour cement in there, you've got a big square of 32 by 32. How do you remove the yesod? So, if you're going to tell me, oh, no problem, they just came in afterwards and they cut the section out so that you'd have that section out, you're not allowed to. Because when you build the mizbeach, the Torah says, avonim shlemos ksiv, it has to be full, complete stones. You can't cut it out. Demach is midi mitute v'shakali. The answer is, what they did is, they took wood and they filled it in the frame in that section that there was not supposed to be yesod. And then they would pour the cement around it, and then when they undid the mold, there was a section cut out from the square. So that doesn't prove anything again. Okay? So that's fine. And you have to say that, because if you don't say that, Hodam Rav Kahana, look what Rav Kahana says. The stones that were to make the corners were hollow. The stones on the kronos were hollow on the inside. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Umalu kemizrak kizavios mizbeach." In Zechariah, it says that in the future, Bnei Yisrael, they're going to be filled like the corners of the mizbeach are filled with blood. Right, we're going to be filled with We're going to be filled with such amazing bounty from conquering all the other nations, like the blood gets filled on the mizbeach. So what happened is the holes. Rashi explains the mizbeach. You're putting all this blood in the corners of the mizbeach. There were actually holes in the in these corners that the blood would go into the stone and wouldn't just sit there on the surface. And the stones on the inside were hollow, and that's where all of it would go. So, hachanami, how do you have a hollow stone? So the answer is avanim shleimos amarachmana. You have to have full stones. You can't cut pieces out. Ella demachas midi mitute v'shakile. They had to build, right? They had to build some kind of box underneath the concrete when they were filling it in, and then you took it away. Hachanami, so here too, when they built the form of the Mizbeach, they had wood and they took it out. Okay, well, I guess we'll stop here.
Drosh Rabba, right?
Dorish Rava, yes.
Oh yeah.